All right, folks. Well, Steve is not here today, so our illustrious host is gone. But apparently, we've had a invasion. So I'm going to bring in Chris Greco, and he can talk about that. And of course, there are other things that are going on in the world as well. And of course, we've got Nick here, of course, the founder of the network. But first, let's bring in Chris so we can hear more of his thoughts about what has just taken place, which apparently is a lovely invasion that we were all expecting, but maybe not expecting this fast. So, definitely, Chris, what is your observations and what do you think will happen now that apparently sanctions have not worked?
Well, it's interesting because about 2 weeks ago, whenever this situation was coming to a head, Shaquille said, and I understand exactly what he said. What he said was, basically was a threat, and isn't a threat as good as real, right? Isn't the threat of invasion as good as real? And unfortunately, I was a member of the U.S. military back in the '70s, and when the Soviet Union was strong, and every single leader that made a threat that never followed through with it, like for instance Khrushchev and the Cuban Missile Crisis, he's gone. If anybody, Gorbachev, gone. I mean, if you're not a strong leader in Russia, you're gone. I mean, it's no, you disappear, you fly away. If there's no, you can write your memoirs. So Putin had to do something. And once he took Donetsk and Lugansk, and nothing was done. Nothing was done.
Right.
Let me make people understand here. Out of the entire population of Ukraine, 17.8%, according to the CIA, 17.8% are Russian speaking. So basically, 17.8% of the population was the reason that Putin went in and took those two regions and said, they're Russian. Now, I just read LinkedIn. Somebody said, hey, what do we care? Ukraine was really part of Russia. Russia's just taking it back. I'm surprised somebody didn't mention the 243,000 Ukrainians that sided with the Nazis during World War II. There were death camps in the Ukraine, operated by and guarded by Ukrainians. So it's like, well, hey, they got what they deserve. They got the Russian invasion, now they can pay for their crimes and all that. And it's like, hey, wait a minute. Wait. This is a border. These are people. Even when I was talking to Ukraine, I remember one time I was at a swimming pool, of all things, on the base in Maryland. Mm-hmm. And there was a contractor there using the pool. And he was speaking. I said, oh, are you Russian? He says, I am not Russian. I am Ukrainian. Now, remember, this was 1980, 1981, right? I am not Russian. I am Ukrainian. Don't call me Russian. I was like, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, offend. And he turned out he was a wrestler. He was a professional wrestler, like a studio wrestler that was in America doing contract stuff with USO and all that. So, I mean, the bottom line is this is a long-held term. The Ukrainians never wanted to be part of Russia. And it'll be interesting to hear what Sasha has to say if he comes on, because, of course, he had time in Ukraine.
Yeah.
But I mean, you ask people, I'm telling you, go out and ask 20 people, where's Ukraine? And somebody might say, oh, is it next to me, Crane? I don't know. I mean, they'll go on and on. They don't even know what's going on. So it's, but there was one thing that was Sasha said about Trump saying that Putin was a genius. In fact, Sasha sent me the article, and I said, I agree. Putin is a genius. Think about this, Sasha. He took, what was it, a third of the country without firing a shot. He signed it over to himself. It's like signing over a loan that you make to yourself.
It appears to me he's firing shots right now.
Oh, yes. You know why? Because we didn't fire shots in return. So now he's sitting there going, hey, all I have to take on is the Ukrainians. No problem. I'll take that country. And the West will stand by, and they'll take – do you know what Germany's doing? Oh, we'll take the refugees. Really, Germany? You're going to take the refugees. Isn't that nice? You're not going to provide any arms or any, you're not going to help the Ukrainians. No.
I have one question to Germans. Who's going to take their refugees when Russia will invade?
Yeah.
Where exactly. The refugees will go from Germany?
Yeah, that's a good one. Who's going to take it? Britain? The UK? Australia? So it's Canada. Canada, but it's the same thing, Sasha. If Canada said we're going to invade the U.S., because something, we own Lake Michigan or whatever it is. So we're going to invade the U.S. And Mexico says we're going to invade Texas because we owned it. We owned it. You guys took it with the Alamo illegally under force. So we're going to take it back. What's the U.S. going to? Well, no, of course you can't do that. And we're going to get Biden to put sanctions on Mexico if they do that. Biden's going to put very heavy sanctions on you if you take Texas. So don't do that. Boy, am I cynical today?
The situation is very simple. The world order is gone. Now it's a rule of the strength, the power, the military approach. And it appears to me in that regard, if you take away the economy, the culture, everything else, and just concentrate on military, Russia is formidable power. And as a formidable power, Putin wants the West to make substantial concessions and recognize this new power of Russia, which the George Bush Sr. failed to absolutely eliminate, which he could do easily, just make a telephone call, really. He failed to do that, and now there are the payback time, baby. So the West now has a dilemma. Okay, first of all, Putin's even rhetoric is 100% the rhetoric of Hitler, who was complaining the Germans are divided nations and everybody's taking advantage of Germans, and it's no more, and we will unite, and we will overpower everybody.
Uber alles.
Exactly the same thing. The Russians are being divided, and people are taking advantage of this Lugansk and Donetsk regions. So now it's a payback time. So not only he will take completely those regions, he is now saying very carefully that he wants to inflict damages just to military infrastructure of Ukraine. Not just Donetsk or Lugansk, forget it. Now it's all Ukraine. But guess what? The Baltic states and Poland, and guess what? Germany, they also have military infrastructures. So this is a threat that in a certain way, when they will learn lessons from what Putin did in Ukraine, the Baltic states, Poland, Germany, and maybe a few other countries, maybe even US, they would learn something. They will try to build up their military capabilities and will attack Russia. So not to be attacked, we are going to do preventive attack ourselves against everybody. Let me finish with Ukraine in next hour and a half. The next comes in 5 hours, Baltic states, and in 7 hours, Poland, and so on and on and on. That's where we're all going, but let's just wait and see.
Just to update you with the media, because as I'm sending this out, this was declined by the U.S.-Russian relations, the show. So you guys have been barred from the U.S.-Russian relations. You've also been barred now from Al Jazeera English, believe it or not, because you're discussing a very sensitive issue, which is Ukraine. But go on, continue, because I haven't had everybody else so far has accepted the content. Go ahead, continue. Because Ukraine isn't going to go away just because we get barred from a couple sites. I mean, it just doesn't matter.
But it is fair enough for them to bar us too. I mean, it's not like it's a significant event that people are going to want to discuss. I mean, it's unfathomable that people would discuss such a topic.
Well, usually Al Jazeera allows us to say anything we want.
Perhaps we should be discussing.
This is one of the first times we got Al Jazeera said, no, we don't want to talk about Ukraine.
Perhaps we should be discussing what brand of ice cream or what flavor of ice cream Joe Biden.
What we should discuss what type of mushrooms do you like?
Exactly.
Do you like big mushrooms, little mushrooms?
So I'm going to respond to Sasha's comments from yesterday. He also sent me the article, and it has been responded to in the Australian media as well. Sasha, look, it wasn't really a very good thing for him to say. I think I understand his
Right.
sentiment, right? I think I get where he's coming from, and he did try to walk back his comments a little bit later in the day. But Trump, some people love this about him, some people hate this about him. He just says stuff, and then he doesn't rely on a teleprompter. He just says stuff, right? Yeah. So, should he have said it? Probably not. It probably doesn't help his popularity very much, and it certainly doesn't. I certainly think that a former president, which he is a former president, he needs to remember that he is actually a former president. He's not just running his own little empire. It does tend to look like he's perhaps encouraging Putin and Putin's actions. Now, having said that, I think it's worth noting that what he is trying to suggest, and it's very self-serving, but what Putin is trying to suggest is that the Ukraine and other Eastern European countries were always part of Russia, and it was forced away from them, and all that sort of stuff, and the embarrassment of the collapse of the USSR, and so he's really just reclaiming what's rightfully his, and he's able to probably add a little bit of credibility to that after the and I forget the president's name. I'm sure Sasha will tell me, who basically essentially vetoed the parliament's desire, which was apparently reflective of the Ukrainian people's desire to sort of have close relations with the EU. And he basically said, no, there's none of that. We're going to increase trade with Russia. He was very unpopular. There was all those riots out the front of the parliament. And ultimately he called a snap election, and then like Trudeau was a coward and just fled when things got too bad, and he lost. But what's interesting is that there is those two regions where there is a strong separatist kind of mentality. And from the perspective of, well, how does a country become a country? Now, when Australia supported East Timor and got criticised by America for going into East Timor, and the United States said, you can't do that. It's all about oil, isn't it, Australia? And we sort of looked at America and said, really, America? Yeah, you just be quiet. Let's go over there into the Northern Hemisphere and shush. But what happened was that and I think we were a subcommittee Security Council member at the time, so we recognized East Timor as being its own sovereign. So what Vladimir Putin has done is, after years of supporting the separatists, he is basically formally acknowledging those two regions as being independent, which, as far as political strategy goes, was a pretty good move, because he is the leader of a Security Council, a full Security Council member. So by rights, those are now independent countries, or they're on their way to being independent countries. Now, of course, that's not going to happen. But I think it's also worth remembering, before he's going to start looking into Poland and all those other countries, the Ukraine does have a lot of mineral wealth that would be quite handy to Russia, including uranium. So I don't think that his move in there is just based on politics or trying to make himself, popular in Russia. But certainly framing it the way that I understand he's framed it, which is, we are recognizing these two separatist places, and we're the good guys. We're sitting in the Russian army not as an act of aggression. We're seeing them in as peacekeepers. I mean, as far as brilliance is concerned, I like it. I think it's great. Now, hopefully, it doesn't escalate any further, and hopefully, he goes back to Russia. But that's not going to happen. So we have to see what his strategic moves are going to be. And you're right, Sasha. I think that this doesn't bode well for Europe, because what exactly is Europe going to do? If you're not prepared to fire back at them, what are you going to do? Give heavy sanctions? You've already got heavy sanctions. So,
Shaquille, the next move will be just a telephone call to Macron, to German Chancellor, to Sleepy Joe, asking to do certain things very nicely, very politely, in a good English, preferably, And then what these people are going to say, the Biden and all others?
Well,
Look,
That's the question I was going to ask
I've got to
you.
say to you, I don't think I read a very interesting article on this before. I don't think that the military action from Russia, or even if there was military reaction from the West, I don't think that in and of itself is going to lead us to World War III. Both countries have got nuclear weapons. There's no real threat that's been made, since the Cold War, that or the missile crisis, that either country is going to use them, and those threats haven't been made by either side. But there is actually flow-on effects that causes a real problem, and one of those, for example, is wheat. So Russia is a major supplier of wheat, and a lot of those countries around the equator don't have any other way of producing it. There probably isn't enough supply out of countries like Australia and the US to supply them. So that can cause food shortages. And generally speaking, when food shortages start to exist, you start to see a destabilization in those regions. And destabilizing governments is what ends up leading to world wars and to wars in general, because that's when military people, normally a strong man of the military, will step in and take over, and then all of a sudden there's all sorts of mayhem, and that's how this situation can escalate. So it's really important that we pay attention to things like food supply and medical supplies and all those.
You're right. Along that line, just heard the wheat futures went up 33%. So I mean, it's a very very high.
Wow, I missed that buy, Sasha.
You missed that buy. You're supposed to get that buy, Nick. You're supposed to get that buy to the network and everything else.
But market is always there.
I know.
There tomorrow, next week,
really, guys. Really, we're talking about the stock market. Really, we're going to talk about the stock market. People are dying.
People are dying. There's got to be a way to monetize.
No, people are dying.
There's got to be a way to monetize on this, right?
Serious issue that everybody's going through.
Went down 20%, right? Wow. But Shaquille, I was listening to you very carefully, and I have a question though to you. All the situation with oil supply and gas supply and so on, it's nothing new. There is. It's been the same thing for the last several years, if not dozens of years. So now West is contemplating heavy the sanctions against Russia. Okay, so Russia will definitely cut its oil and gas supply. However, it's happening the other way around. It's Germany that now announced that they're not going to use Russian supplied products. So it's a two-way street. So those people refuse to supply, and those people refuse to consume Russian produced gas and oil. Okay. Now, Russian revenue is based on its oil and gas supplies and exports. So without that revenue, Russia will suffer, actually tremendously, believe it or not. Their stock market will be killed. It's already about there. And the citizens, it leads us to another question, very interesting one. Are Russian people sharing responsibility for what's happening right now with Putin and Putin's government or not? That was the main question. It was the main question of Nuremberg's process. Are the German soldiers responsible for the actions?
German people are responsible for the actions of German soldiers, right, Sasha?
The
Sasha
top
Friesen.
I think he's got some bandwidth issues in Canada.
Absolutely.
Is there a mushroom cloud over
it? You raised up a little bit there, Sasha, so we missed the last.
And I will throw just one more thing. If you remember why Japan started the war against U.S. and attacked Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
Because U.S. put embargo on oil to Japan.
Yeah,
and they suffering for several years, and finally they decided that either we will just lie down and die,
enough is
or
enough.
we have to do something. Okay.
Yeah.
So Russia was not in a situation like that to start what they did in the last few hours. They are a member of United Nations, the Security Council, the WTO, all organizations. If they wanted to, they would have been accepted to European Union and possibly NATO and so on.
They can't be part of NATO.
Yeah. Okay.
You would hope.
Well,
you
they
hope
got rid of the Warsaw.
Putin
NATO
himself,
designed to constrain Russian power.
Putin himself in early 2000, after he became president, he was mulling things that maybe Russia should join NATO and maybe Russia should join European Union or so on.
Yeah,
Okay.
But I don't understand. NATO is the whole purpose of NATO is to restrain the power of the Soviet Union.
Well,
which doesn't
well,
exist anymore.
But there was no longer Soviet Union
So
around.
he's going to
There's
try
no
and restrain himself.
well, the thing is, okay,
That's
okay,
another good
Sasha,
move, you must say.
Sasha, he had moves on the chessboard. He could move west or east. Okay,
Right.
west means that he could have said, "Well, we're going to make Russia more European, be part of the European Union." East means he's going to ally himself with China. Okay, let's get real. Because I just have all the blogs coming through on China.
Well,
How much
that's not entirely true.
China
If
supports
If
Russia?
he goes far enough
Yeah,
east,
big
he hits
time.
Alaska, and he could
Yeah.
actually become part of America.
Yes.
Maybe
No,
he
that's
could
true.
buy the United States.
Well, he should ask for Alaska back. I mean,
and then he could move into Canada. And
Yeah,
as I
yeah,
said,
sure.
you guys are used to buying
Well,
countries.
well,
You
well,
want to buy
the
Greenland.
thing is-
Wait a minute. Didn't Sarah Palin say so she could see Russia?
Yeah,
That's right.
he went from Alaska. But the thing
So,
is, he had an
I've
opportunity to
got a
move
question.
east or west. He moved toward the east. He moved.
I've
toward
got a
China.
question for Sasha and our Canadian audience. So you can't believe what's happened in the Ukraine. They've declared martial law. It's an emergency. So basically, if I'm understanding things correctly,
The truckers.
the current situation in the Ukraine and the current situation in Canada, in Justin Trudeau's mind, is exactly the same. This is the same kind of emergency. You need martial law in both places.
Well, Trudeau already cancelled martial law emergency.
He did.
He already cancelled that.
Yeah, he did.
He should never have done it in the first place. And now what he should do is cancel his prime ministership, do his country and his world a favor, and leave.
You know, it's really a shame that Justin Trudeau, is not the same as his father, because his father was absolutely my hero from the standpoint when I was sitting overseas and they had those Iranian hostages and they escaped through the Canadian embassy. Pierre Trudeau was a major actionable person in that whole thing with Argos. And he got those people out of there. And I mean, there was only like 2 or 3 of them, but he got them out of the embassy, and he was able to get them back to the United States. Canada under Pierre Trudeau was really, really, really our friend. So if Justin Trudeau is not like his father, shame on him, because that is something that is just unbelievably good.
Maybe it was the influence of his
Yes, the influence of other folks and everything. Hey, Chris, I do have to tease you and ask you something, because you were giving all these examples of things that could be given back and all of that. Does that go for Louisiana as well, since that was the French purchase and everything?
That's right.
So,
Don't get me started on the French. Oh my God, and they want it all back. We'll take the center of the United States. Thank you.
Can Brits, clearly I'm British, you can say that by looking at me.
Clearly.
Can we have Hawaii back then?
Oh, I never thought about that. That's right, because you guys, I was with Captain Cook. Who was that? Who was that? Was that Captain Cook that went into Hawaii, Tahiti, all that stuff?
Yeah, he eventually got killed.
Shaquille, why are you settling for Hawaii? If the British, you could have the whole 13 colonies. You could have from Florida on up to like Vermont and everything.
Well, and you know, Mark, I think it would actually be quite good for the United States if those 13 colonies did come back. I think that the southern states should now secede, and I will remind the northerners of your country, and especially I will remind California, that at that particular time, the southern states, the great land of Dixie, was the 3rd largest economy in the world by themselves.
That's right.
So they were significantly better than the economic production from the north, and of course Canada hadn't yet. California, they hadn't yet ventured into the western frontier. So, but I also might just remind Americans that they should really have a look at history. So, the whole idea behind some places not wanting slavery wasn't because they were these great people with great moralistic hearts. It was because they wanted to keep blacks out of there. And California was one of those places. And so I think maybe some of those, California liberals might want to be reminded of just how much the great land of Dixie actually supported California against taxes and all those other sorts of things, and tried to actually contain slavery where it was until it could be gotten rid of, as opposed to the appalling way that the northern states tried to deal with it.
Well, I'll tell you something.
Speaking of which and everything, really quickly, apparently, in addition to the Ukraine war, we've got another situation that's going on as well in the United States, because apparently there's some conferences going on around climate change and things along those lines. And they said that after another year of record-breaking temperatures and extreme weather disasters, wealthy countries are under pressure to make good on their commitment to mobilize $100 billion a year to help the poorer countries deal with their climate change. So developed countries now project they won't meet that pledge until 2023, 3 years late and woefully short of the real needs. So I was just wondering, what are your thoughts about this? Because apparently there's a bunch of countries in Africa, Asia, and a bunch of other places that are saying, hey, we need our 100 billion. The climate is, the sky is falling, and we need to work on this and actually improve what's going on in that sense. So
Mark, don't even worry about it. I did a study. Mushroom clouds and nuclear war will cool the planet. Okay, so the Putin is actually moving towards solving climate change.
Well, it has
Greta Thunberg would love him. I mean, given that she glared at Donald Trump, perhaps Putin might be her hero. But it's interesting, Mark, that that these poor people, that the impoverished in the world, don't have.
You got yourself frozen there, Shaquille.
Shaquille got frozen.
Part of it could be because the Soviet Union, which is I guess now Russia, decided to do cyber attacks.
Yeah, they have actually.
I know they have, and it could be it's affected bandwidth maybe in Canada and Australia already. So therefore, as they say, goodbye, Shaquille. He's gone. Well, actually, he's frozen out right now.
So climate change is not as a result. There's already been a study done, a scientific study done, that the Earth's core is cooling. Mm-hmm. That is what's causing all of this issue. And the thing is, that study is shoved down in the in the studies of different areas. But Jules Verne actually made that prediction back in the 1880s through Mysterious Island. He actually stated that the core was cooling. And I swear the guy was a time traveler. But basically what's happening is you talk about climate change, and what's going to happen is that, like I said, Siberia is warming up. They're going to be able to take that tundra. They're going to be able to put more crops there, put their wheat into play, get the wheat futures. I'm telling you that Russia, I mean, what Trump said, I agree with Shaquille. And I told that, I wrote to Sasha and told him that. With Trump, he's the disruptor in chief. This is what he does. If media is going to publish him, then he's going to say anything just to get his face and his voice on the air. So, but is Putin a genius? Absolutely. I mean, he's sat back and he just took bit by bit, figured out, hey, is anybody going to, it's like what is it, Nick? I'm not sure if I got it, the frog in the boiling water. You don't throw the frog in the boiling water. You throw it in the water and slowly boil it.
Slowly boil it until the thing as it gets there.
Yeah.
And speaking of being a disruptor, apparently, and I said I was going to bring this up yesterday, now that there's been the invasion, two questions. One, what should Biden's step be, since he's already very low in popularity? And are we going to hear anything from that body that says that it's supposed to be a governing body of the world, the United Nations?
The United Nations
had talked about what they wanted to do with the genocides that were going on in Myanmar and in other parts of the world, including some African nations.
Right.
And of course,
Rwanda, sure.
I mean, they've said things, but what they've actually been able to enforce, that's a whole other matter. So I'm just wondering, what will their reaction be? And will the UN ever have any power?
The UN doesn't have any power, and the UN has already condemned it, but it really doesn't matter. The real thing matters is, and I think this is really a test that Putin is doing with Biden, because Biden was so weak on the Afghanistan move. In other words, if you see such a weak player on the board, he's going, well, I'll just go take Ukraine. Why not? Opportune time. You got a very weak president, and here's the reality of war. Unfortunately, war is hell. Okay. and you need to have a measured response, and it can't be just sanctions. Unfortunately, you have to inflict bodily damage as they inflict bodily damage to you. I don't know if Chris will agree with me, because I come from a
the only bodily
perspective.
damage that your president is capable of inflicting is onto himself.
Well, we know that. That's where Putin's taking advantage of this.
Of course he is.
Because the thing is, if a bully hits you, you got to hit back. Now, I'll tell you this: China is not your friend. I've been reading the boards on China. You know what they say? Hey, look, this is the U.S.'s fault. This is your imperialism. Your imperialistic people. I don't even know why we trade with these people. I'm thinking I'm going to sell my Alibaba stock. Again, it's not all Chinese, but there is a huge element in mainland China that frankly hates the United States of America.
Sure.
By the way, they do have some rational reasons.
In fairness, there's a good reason for people in China not to be too happy with the United States. I mean, some of the egregious abuses that has happened to the Chinese people for hundreds of years, not just in recent decades. I think that there's pretty good reason for the Chinese.
Yeah, well, that's what they're bringing up. They're bringing up. They said millions of people were enslaved in the United States building the railroads. Okay, wait a minute. First of all, it wasn't millions of people,
but still,
the thing is, they did have a lot of Chinese people over here that were building railroads. Okay, so they have this. They do like this. They do go back into history and they say, look, you carpet bomb Laos. I have the reports right now. You guys invaded Afghanistan. You guys invaded Libya. You guys invaded Kuwait. You guys invaded what does it call it?
So it sounds a bit like what you would like to have happen, Nick, is that they just get over it and say, look,
get over it.
Doesn't have history. Which Nick, right. if that's what you believe, then would you say that you agree with me in these arguments I have with Mark Lee about slavery? It ended a long time ago, right? All those things that happened that you're all complaining about now, and all these race relation issues that are coming up right now, they're all from hundreds of years ago. Don't worry about it. Let's move on.
Well, yeah. You
know, if you're going to go back, to the United States being responsible, let's do that. Let's just make that as a presumption, right? That we're responsible. So let's go back to World War II. In World War II, anybody fighting the Japanese and anybody fighting the Germans was an ally to the United States. So let's talk about Marshal Tito, who basically took all of Yugoslavia and bottled up, 3 or 4 panzer divisions so that we could get into D-Day. Ho Chi Minh, who fought against the Japanese and was later called the Viet Minh, which was later called the Viet Cong. Then you had Mao, who was actually kind of sided with Chiang Kai-shek, and we flew missions with Chiang Kai-shek against the Japanese, and then we were actually allied with Mao while he was trying to fight the Japanese. Then all of a sudden, the French Indonesia, they go back and they go, okay, we're going to take French Indonesia back, and Vietnam says, Ho Chi Minh says, no, you're not. We're going to start fighting against you. The next thing you know, we're involved in Vietnam because it's a communist area. All those people, Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong, Marshal Tito, all of them were communist. So all of a sudden we said, well, we can't have that. You fought against the Germans and you fought very bravely, by the way. The partisans in Yugoslavia were brutal. I mean, the Nazis didn't even want to go in there. They just literally bottled them up. They didn't even want to go into the country. So all these things. And then we sit back and we go, geez, why is it that well, the thing is, hey, as long as you're fighting for us, you're good. But when you're not fighting for us, all of a sudden you're bad. So it's a situation where, and Soviet Union the same way. Hey, we gave tons of equipment, tons of money to the Soviet Union to help fight the Germans. And I told Sasha this. At one point in 1940, the Germans came upon in Poland. They came upon a mass grave. I think it was 40,000 people in this grave, and they contacted Geneva. And they said, we just want you to let you know, we didn't do this. We did not do this. Here's the grave site. Here are the people. We did not kill these people and put them in here. And the Soviets said, well, we didn't do it. So it's like, well, wait a minute. Who did it? Because it happened to be the side that the Soviets were trying to take while the Germans were taking one part of Poland, the Soviets were taking the other part of Poland. So all of a sudden it was like, they just split it. They just split it in half. So it's that thing, we allow this.
There has to see what I also hate is the minute there is a conflict, they withdraw their diplomats. That's when you want to have diplomats, okay? In other words, the thing is you need people that are the peacemakers or people that can work their way through these issues and deal the way out of the situation. And that's the reason I didn't like the U.S.'s response to the Olympics. The first thing Biden did, a weak president, he goes, well, we're not going to have our diplomats go in. That was stupid, and the real problem here, the reason why this is taking place is Afghanistan. That incredibly weak response that he did on Afghanistan, Putin smells blood. So he goes, well, this guy's weak. I'm going to go after him. And so
Nick, it was Benghazi. It was Benghazi. Benghazi. That's why he's pulling everybody out.
Why is it Benghazi?
This is where international
where Chris,
issues.
Where Chris, what's his name, was killed as a diplomat. He was killed in Benghazi.
But I'm saying Biden, what he did is he just withdrew from Afghanistan like an idiot.
No, but he withdrew his diplomatic people and everything else. And the reason they do that is because they're scared there's going to be another Benghazi.
Oh my Lord, are you kidding me?
And
Benghazi isn't going to take place in the Olympics.
But this is what
this guy doesn't know how to play chess. I mean, this
is what we see when we see international. The people who are living in the Ukraine, right? They are just human beings. They're citizens just trying to get on.
Well, I think Sasha used to live in Odessa, Ukraine.
What we are seeing every time conflict happens anywhere
Sasha
in the world,
got out.
The everyday person ends up, families get torn apart, people die, and these are just normal people trying to live their lives, and they are the victims of bad politics. But when it comes to Afghanistan, Biden has weakened the West, has weakened the world. Everybody told him that this was the result, that this is what would happen. It would weaken the West. He did it anyway. Just like everyone told him, if you go on this big spending spree, you're going to inflate the currency. It's going to hurt the poorest people the quickest. And what's happened? The poorest people in America now are struggling more than what the wealthier you are, the better off you are right now. But the poorest people, they're the ones struggling to afford food. They're the ones that can't afford to put gas in their cars. They're the ones that are struggling. So, time and time again, every policy that he's come up with has just been a complete disaster. And honestly, I can't see, not that I think the Republicans are doing such a fantastic job in opposition, but I can't see how he's going to have any other result but be completely slaughtered in the midterms. And although 2 years is a long time, I can't see how the Democrats will fare particularly well at the next election, especially when you have a House and potentially a Senate that's not going to be on your side and you're in the executive. I just think this is a recipe for disaster for the Democrats.
Shaquille, you got it. Viva Republicans, viva Trump. You got it.
No, I'm not. And I've said before, quite honestly, I hope that Trump doesn't run again.
Please don't run again.
He will run against Clinton.
He's going to be that much older. I think it's time for the country to get some new ideas and some new direction. But if he does run again and Hillary Clinton runs again,
I want to ask you something.
Because I'm sitting over here. It'll be a great show.
Okay, just a minute.
You told me about some new ideas.
This just in.
Oh, here we go.
Putin will withdraw his troops if you install Donald Trump as president.
Shaquille, here's the question. You said that it's time to get somebody else with the new ideas. Let me ask you this. When Trump, remember his elevator ride down, and he's got in the president's race, and he's got a hell of a lot of new ideas. So without Trump, did Republicans at that time had any ideas besides defeating Democrats and Obama or Clinton or something like that? Did the Republican Party had any ideas? If yes, where they are? Trump just took over all Republican parties because they didn't have any ideas. So his ideas, regardless whether they're good or not so good or doesn't matter, but at least he had ideas. Now,
hey, Sasha, I got some medication for you. We'll pump that over to you. But with Trump, every time you say Trump, you get like oh Trump, my God,
Trump. But hang on, Sasha, to answer your question, the reason why I think Trump was able to essentially take over the Republican Party during that time and in the lead up to that election was because he was a political outsider. And that's what people seem to forget. Like Hillary Clinton was a shoo-in to win the election, right? It was sort of a done thing. She was just going to win. And when he came along, a lot of the things that he said, when people like to look back now and all they remember is the comment about, I'm going to grab her by the, whatever, and little comments like that the media made a big deal out of. But originally the media wasn't too hostile towards him because they thought that he was never going to get the nomination. He was never going to win. He appeared on the Jimmy Kimmel show and, all that sort of stuff. He was also on the Colbert show. Like he did the rounds like anybody else would. And, the thing is that he talked about what is very easy for a person to talk about, which is the government not functioning properly. Things that are frustrating to people when the Senate doesn't agree on things, when things are filibustered, when there's the swamp, as he called it, of this political mess. He came out and talked about it, and he said, I'm going to fix this shit on my own. Well, he couldn't quite fix it on his own, but he gave it a go. And I think that's why he got a lot of the popularity that he got. But then since he won, because there are a lot of people that don't like him, it's, look at the way he stood on the escalator coming down. Look at the way he walked over there. Oh, he walked up the stairs too briskly. Oh, he didn't walk fast enough. Oh, Melania, if you're really being held hostage, blink twice. I mean, it's just this endless stream of just drivel. And of course, nobody heard that who was fond of him and went, you're right, yeah, I've changed my mind now. So all that happened is the people that didn't like him just didn't like him even more, and the people that did like him continued liking him. Now, look, Hillary Clinton came into it with all the same old things, but she also went down the path of identity politics, and it backfired on her. Yep. So if she comes into the next election doing the same thing, and she comes up against somebody who I think is way more charismatic than Trump, which is Ron DeSantis, but even if she went back up against Trump, what is she going to say? Let's become more divided? Let's continue to separate ourselves? Let's make sure that our youth hate the country and want to burn the flags. Let's introduce CRT into school. And these are all the things that people don't like at the moment. And the thing is that it's not the winners. The winners don't continue to win, right? The voice of the people who are not in power always gets louder and louder until eventually they win. And then when they win, the other side's voices eventually get louder and louder. I mean, that's how it works. That's the sort of the balancing system, which is oppositional politics.
So it's a good thing, in your opinion, to have, as president of the United States, person who admires all the dictators, starting with Putin and
I don't think that
leader and many others.
I don't think that he admires. I don't think
because when he get together with the democratic people, like for example, European Union or NATO or so on, the leaders from Europe, they are laughing at him, at Trump. They are laughing at him openly. There are pictures. Even our little Trudeau was laughing at him. Do you understand what kind of a joke Trump is?
And countries that don't have leftist leaders aren't laughing at Trump. The ones like, do you think Germany? Do you think they're laughing at Trump, or do you think they were pretty happy with him? I mean, well, they weren't. The Germans weren't very happy with a lot of things going on, especially with the mass migration into Germany. And I spent a lot of time in Germany, Switzerland, Austria. I mean, the sentiment outside of the big cities is not very positive. And if what you're saying is that he admires all these world dictators, I don't agree with that. And if he really does admire them and hold them up on a pedestal, well, no, I don't think that's a good thing. But I don't agree with you that he admires them. He goes into the European Union. Have a look at the dysfunction of the European Union Parliament and the European Union commissions, and bitterly complained about by the majority of European Union countries. Nothing's been done about it until the UK finally had enough and said, we're out. And you know what? I hope Italy and Greece does the same thing. And eventually the Germans are going to get jack of it and they'll leave. And I'll tell you, when you do a study and it says that 96% of French people believe that their children are going to have a life which was not at least as good as a life that they have had, it's a problem. And
but it's everywhere.
The dysfunction of bureaucracies in the European Union.
In US, the same thing. Children,
absolutely,
our children will live not nearly as well as we do. They will do much worse.
That's right, and it is the fault, of the political system. But the way to correct that is not to have totalitarianism.
Right.
Am
Well,
I
you know,
supporting totalitarian?
No, I'm not saying you are, but what you're saying is that Trump is an admirer of the dictators of the world, and I'm saying
I think
you're really missing. You really guys are missing the big superpower here. It's Xi Jinping. If you want to know who's going to win the war, it's going to be China. Think about it. Russia and the United States get
technically speaking, China isn't even in this war.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you got A and they are. If A and B fight each other to a bloody pulp, C wins. Who stays out of the fight? So Xi Jinping and the Chinese are the ones that are really happy that the United States and Russia are going out at each other because China wins, and that's what they want to do. So when Putin goes over there, hey, look, I'm going to invade Ukraine. Hey, when fight the U.S., go ahead. Because what do they care? So the big winner is China. If you go look at the threads in China, because I've been keeping up with these guys, they love the fact the United States and Russia are going out.
Another way to put it, and along the same lines, Putin is China's dog. The Chinese.
I know that, right? But see, the thing is, come on, Sasha. If you get Russia and the United States, let's say if they said, hey, we're going to go into a big nuke war, and they blew each other smithereens, what is the most powerful country in the world? China. In other words, the minute we go after each other, China wins. So the thing is, China has no interest at all. They're just going to back away and say, hey, guys, you guys want to fight each other? Go ahead.
China is learning exactly what they're going to do with Taiwan from this situation. Now, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Point. They are not going to take Taiwan. They're not going to invade Taiwan. They have something that Russia does not have. And this is going to sound really non sequitur, but they have something that Russia does not have, the steam catapult. And let me tell you something. You have a steam catapult and you have the ability to put that on your carriers. You now have national power. You can put that national power wherever you want. None of these V-stall things where they go up over a ramp like the Russians have and all that stuff. No, I'm talking about a steam catapult. And they have them. The French has it and the U.S. has it. Now, where did the Chinese get it? Did they get it from the U.S. or did they get it from France? So anyways, so that's beside the point. But the bottom line is that so you have the Chinese and they're going to take those South China Sea islands. They're going to take them.
Is there anything about France that you do like? I mean, the wine and cheese is good. The escargot.
Yes, pastries. Let me tell you something. You know what I like about France? When I lived in Germany, we were right on the border, and we used to go to dinner at a place called BITCH, which was pronounced Biche, France. And we didn't call it Biche, but it was pronounced Biche. But we would go to BITCH, France, and we would get a dinner and whatever else, and we would cross the border. We would slap our U.S. passports against the windshield of the car, and the French guard would come on in. We'd come back to Germany. The Germans would have us get out of the car, take our passports, check underneath the car, check around the car. And I asked asked my buddy, I said, what are they checking for? He says, any French pastries that are left over. So I mean, we would go through there. But I mean, yes, the French, and the thing is, everyone sits there and says, well, Chris, you're so narrow-minded. They helped us with the American Revolution. They helped us with they didn't help us with Jack. They helped us because they hated the British. That's why they hated. That's why they did what they did. That's why they helped. Because they hated the British. They hate the British. They still hate the British.
Fair enough. I mean, fair enough.
The British don't like them either. That's why
I know.
The British don't like. He doesn't like the French. That's just the simple thing. He does not like them whatsoever. And we see that.
Steam catapult. I'm telling you.
But actually, China. But Chris, China's already doing something that Russia has done, but Russia did it openly in the public. But it seems to me China's been doing it very quietly, very succinctly, but they're doing it effectively because in reality, hasn't China invaded probably about, I don't know how many, 15, 20, however many countries that they've decided to go into in the continent of Africa? Because, like I said, they're doing a lot of work there.
Infrastructure.
China hasn't invaded any countries in Africa. What China has done has been to run itself from a national perspective. I'm not going to talk about their domestic system and how people individually interact with government, but they have empowered their country dramatically by increasing their trade with as many countries around the world as they can. And they've gone into Africa while we've sat around and argued about crap that doesn't matter. And we don't even have trade amongst allied countries. I mean, how much trade goes on between Australia and the US anymore?
Yeah.
We have allowed ourselves to become weaker, and that's not China's fault. China has acted in their best economic interests. They've done the things that you would expect a good leader of China to do. What is he supposed to do? Say, you know what? I should make my country weaker. He's done everything that he can and everything that he should do to empower the economy of China and to give a good result to the Chinese people. He should be commended for it. We might
kill his people.
that actually cares about us.
Killed his people.
Well, if Putin decides to go after Mongolia because they go, well, the Mongolians are really us because they took us over a long time ago, and they're really Russian-speaking Mongols, and Russia and China go after each other, what are we going to do as the U.S.? Sit back and go, hey guys, have at it.
Well, the United States might be happy then, right? Because if China and Russia go after each other, the United States and the UK can just sit back and go, right, you guys go at it.
Yeah, go after each other.
What has happened? The United States has decided to take on Russia. I've said this before. That game Risk. You can't take over Russia. You can't do it. You can't get across there. You always lose.
You can't take Russia there.
Yeah, you always lose when you try to take Russia. It's just too big. You can't do it. I do want to get to one of our other favorite topics and everything. And no, it's not Shaquille's, but it's that lovely thing called COVID. Because apparently Moderna came out earlier today and said that it's going to be an endemic in 2023, meaning it's just going to be another seasonal disease that can be managed with vaccines and treatments. And therefore, Nick, it sounds like Moderna is saying it's about to be over, this lovely pandemic, because it's going to be an endemic.
Yeah.
So I was wondering your thoughts about this, because they're saying, it's just going to be like the flu.
I think they're right. In other words, it's going to be over because either you've taken the vaccine or you got the disease. Either way, it'll probably be over. But when that's over, there has to be some other thing that is creatively designed to kill people. So we have a war with Russia. That'll be it. So you get rid of COVID. Now you got the war in Ukraine. And how long is that going to go on? Is my question. In other words, this Ukraine thing isn't going to go away tomorrow, for sure. And may not next week or next month. Now, Sasha used to live in Odessa. I finally found out where it is. A little city on the Black Sea, right? Yeah, he's from Odessa. And the only question is, how deep is this? Whether it's not an invasion, he said it is a peacekeeping mission. How deep is this peacekeeping mission going to go? That's my question. In other words, is all of a sudden Odessa going to be part of Russia?
Putin says that Russia never start any war. However, after each war, Russian territory gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
Why nobody understands? That's a reality.
Mm-hmm.
I think Putin will definitely have to get Zelensky out of power, completely change all the government, parliament, whatever is there, install his forces, primarily from Donetsk, Donbass regions, and this is a reality. So there will be no more democratic Ukraine as we know. It will be Ukraine, but very different Ukraine from now on. And the next, he's now learned the way how to get around it, how to deal with West, US. So next would come Baltic states and Poland. And then he will not step there either. He will not stop there.
He's always wanted Romania. He's always wanted Romania. Romania has a good refinery area. It's got a good oil thing. He's always wanted that. And Romania is sitting there they have got to be sweating at this point in time.
Yeah, and Ukraine actually has a lot of natural resources. I mean, when I saw a report, they were just heavy in natural resources everywhere.
Lots of coal.
But unlike China, see what China would do, they just buy up Ukraine. No problem. In other words, but
that's true.
Russia, seriously, in other words, they're not invading Africa. They're just buying everything in Africa.
They're putting infrastructure in.
They're putting infrastructure in. They're just saying, hey, look, we'll just buy everything. Russia just doesn't have the economic power to go in and just buy Ukraine. That's the problem. Russia is weak economically, but they're strong militarily. If they had the economic power, they would just go and buy Ukraine. They go, that's very interesting. We'll buy all this piece of land. We'll buy that piece of land. And they just keep buying Ukraine. Eventually, they own all of Ukraine or a good chunk of it. But they don't have that economic power. So what do they have? 190,000 troops, 8,000 tanks. And so they go, well, we can't buy it, so we'll just go in and take it.
But you see,
Japan owns Maryville, Ohio.
Do they
Japan
really?
owns Maryville,
Right.
Ohio.
Wow, yeah, I know
They
that.
put a
Yeah.
Toyota plant in there, a Honda plant. They put a Honda plant in there. My sister speaks and writes Japanese fluently because
Sure.
she took that
Yeah.
as part of the thing. And they hired her as a translator, and they basically own Maryville, Ohio. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just,
and I believe what he's going to do is he's actually going to get rid of the Ukrainian military. First thing to do is get rid of the military, because if they get rid of the Ukraine military and he's going after their military installations, then it's up to the people to defend. And look at what happened in Afghanistan. People are weak. They're not defending Kyiv. They're getting in cars going to Poland. Millions of people are evacuating. They're not, because there's two people: the people that fight, people that flee. Most people are going to flee, and they're already doing it in Ukraine. So if he knocks out the military, then he can march into Ukraine and just take it over. And I think that's what he's going to do.
Nick, so far, after he amassed almost 200,000 troops or so, he's not marching in Ukraine anywhere. There is a huge resistance right now. They were able to get down 5 military planes, and I think about 3 or 4 helicopters. I'm not so sure. There will be Russian soldiers. Without real invasion and taking over the actual building where parliament sits or so on, they will not get anywhere.
Putin's calling.
Yeah, Putin's calling.
Not get anywhere. So to do all his program, he has to do real invasion and controlling.
Right.
See,
that's not Putin calling. That's Biden calling. He needs Sasha's help. That's Biden calling right now.
Vlad is trying to get some advice.
That's right.
How should I take this Ukraine deal? But
Nick, what I'm trying to say is that he has to really invade it. He cannot control and elect new parliament, president, and so on from the just missiles and warplanes. He has to really invade.
Right.
And that's where the Ukrainians will match Russian power. First of all, they are fighting on their own territory.
That's right.
Correct.
They will fight for their people, for their motherland, and so on. And Russian soldiers are not motivated really. What are they fighting for? This Putin and his friends oligarchs? What are they fighting for? So you'll see in a longer war, I don't think that Russia will succeed at all. They have to do it in next 2-3 days, period. More than 3 days, it will be over for Russians.
Well, there's a difference between invading and inviting. There's invading and there's inviting. Russia has never invaded anybody. They've always been invited in. And that's where Putin's going to go with this. He's going to say, "Look, I've been invited to take Ukraine. I'm not invading anybody."
But Chris, you said it was
but there is no invitation for Mr. Putin yet. I haven't.
He's got to send somebody over to Kiev and say, "I'm the person who's really the president, and I'm going to invite Russia over."
Yeah, he's just got to invite him over. But along those same lines, Chris, and I know we got to wrap up and everything, isn't that the same conversation that has been had for decades, if not centuries, about freedom fighters versus terrorists? Because one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Yes.
Right. You got it, Mark.
Very, very good.
Yeah. That's basically it.
Good point.
So, well, it looks like we're at the hour.
We are at the hour.
Right. So we may be on tomorrow, or it may not, because is the world going to be here tomorrow? I'm waiting to look for the mushroom clouds again.
The world will still be here tomorrow.
Okay.
Balloon's not going up. Nope.
All right, good. Okay, so as long as mushrooms clouds aren't going to be here, we'll be here.
We'll be here, and I understand Steve will be back here tomorrow as well. So that will be good to see him, and we'll have that conversation tomorrow. But right now, let's see all those people who are running around. Maybe they're running around trying to get to Mr. Putin.
All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow then.
Good play.